A single Kirby vacuum could cost as much as a month's rent in many regions. Think about that for a second. You could have kept a roof over your head, or you could have bought a machine to suck up dust. This wasn't an appliance you picked up casually at Sears. This was a purchase that sat in the same category as a used car, a serious financial decision, dressed up as a cleaning tool. People weren't just buying convenience. They were buying status, permanence. The illusion of owning something meant to last forever. But why would anyone pay that much for something you could buy elsewhere for a fraction of the price? Kirbys built in the 1950s are still running today. You can plug one in right now and it'll roar to life like it just rolled off the factory line. These machines weren't flimsy plastic gadgets that cracked in a year. They were heavy, chrome-covered beasts, closer to farm equipment than household tools. Owners describe them with the same reverence you'd give to a vintage car or a family watch. Clunky, yes, but immortal. So how can a product both inspire lifelong loyalty and bitter regret at the same time? Ask a Kirby owner, and you'll hear the same strange confession. I love this vacuum, but I hate the way I got it. That's the paradox that defines the entire Kirby story. The product is genuinely impressive, built to last, yet people carry around the sting of how it entered their lives. It wasn't a happy purchase, it was a pressured one. Admiration chained to resentment. To understand that contradiction, we have to look at how Kirby was actually sold. You couldn't find Kirby at Walmart, Sears, or even specialty shops. That was by design. Kirby didn't sit on shelves waiting for you to discover it. It came to you, uninvited, unplanned, knocking on your door like a guest you never asked for. The strategy cut out retail entirely. No aisles, no price tags, no comparisons. Just you, your living room, and a salesman who'd do anything to keep your attention. And when it knocked, it didn't leave quietly. Kirby wasn't just a company. It was a maze of independent distributors, each one a middleman in a long chain. Headquarters sold the machines to distributors. The distributors passed them to sales crews, and those crews were the ones knocking on doors, chasing commissions, and applying the pressure. The genius was in the distance. Kirby's name sat proudly on the machine, but the company itself could shrug and say, "We didn't tell them to do that." That structure sounded like entrepreneurship, but functioned more like a trap, resembling a pyramid in its recruiting and commission structure, though centered on selling a real product. Distributors pitched new recruits on the dream of owning your own business. No boss, unlimited income, freedom. But the reality looked less like a storefront and more like a multi-level marketing system with a real product at its core. Recruits paid their own way, worked endless hours, and earned scraps. Commissions were stacked so steeply, the person at the bottom barely saw a dime. The real money wasn't just in selling vacuums. It was in recruiting more hopefuls to join the grind. For the system to work, someone had to get pressured, and it wasn't just the salesman. One of the most infamous tactics, dump a jar of dirt on the customer's clean carpet. Picture it. Your living room is spotless, you've just vacuumed, and suddenly a stranger scatters dirt across your floor like a magician, revealing a trick. And then, with a flourish, the Kirby swallows it all in seconds. The machine works, no question. But the real trick isn't the suction, it's the shame. You feel exposed, embarrassed, and suddenly aware of every speck you might have missed. But the dirt was only the start. The real pressure was psychological. Every word of the pitch was scripted, from the first handshake to the last guilt trip. Sales reps weren't improvising, they were following a playbook tested and perfected over decades. You weren't just being shown a vacuum, you were being told you might be failing as a parent, that you weren't protecting your family, that choosing a cheaper model was settling for less. The pitch hit every nerve, guilt, pride, fear, and when emotion didn't close the sale, the salesman simply didn't leave. Families describe salesmen who sat in their living rooms for hours refusing to take no as an answer. It was a siege disguised as politeness. He'd smile, chat, drink your coffee, but every moment was designed to wear you down. Time itself became a weapon, because eventually most people caved, not out of excitement, but out of exhaustion. But the same pressure crushing buyers was also crushing the sellers. New recruits were told, practice on your relatives first. Your very first assignment wasn't a stranger's house. It was grandma's, or your cousin's, or the neighbor you grew up with. You learned to sharpen your pitch by cornering the people you loved. For many, that's when the first crack appeared. The realization that if you'd sell this way to family, you'd sell this way to anyone. The dream of running a business quickly turned into an all-consuming grind. Salesmen were told they were entrepreneurs, their own bosses, builders of empires. But the reality? 80-hour weeks, no safety net, chasing commissions that barely covered gas. The language was freedom. The life was captivity. Kirby wasn't just grinding down homeowners. It was grinding down the very people who believed they were on their way to success. Young recruits burned out, families strained, dreams dissolved. And yet, for all the pain, many people still cling to an odd affection for Kirby. One owner joked, "My Kirby's lasted longer than my marriage." It sounds like a punchline, but it's also true. These machines became unkillable artifacts, survivors of decades, moves, even divorces. And no matter how much resentment people carried about how they got it, there's a grudging respect for a vacuum that just refuses to die. That pride shows just how tangled the emotions around Kirby really were. Some families tell stories of ducking behind curtains when the Kirby van rolled down the street. Imagine it. Kids whispering, parents pulling down blinds, everyone holding their breath like a cartoon family hiding from the taxman. It was part comedy, part survival instinct, a neighborhood-wide game built on exhaustion from relentless sales calls. People laughed about it later, but in the moment, it was pure defense. The laughter softens the memory, but doesn't erase the power imbalance. For some, owning a Kirby was proof you'd made it, a luxury good in chrome and steel. The machine wasn't just a vacuum, it was heavy, gleaming, almost regal in its permanence. To buy one meant you weren't just cleaning your home. You were investing in your family's future. And the way some people invest in fine china or a Rolex, it was a badge of pride, a signal of status. But pride in the product could never fully separate from the way it was sold. People confess, "I hated how I bought it, but I've never regretted having it." This is a contradiction that refuses to die. Anger at the process, respect for the product, laughter about the memory, guilt about the decision. Somehow, Kirby managed to lodge itself in both halves of the brain at once, the practical and the emotional, the bitter and the proud. This contradiction points to something bigger than vacuums. Kirby's genius wasn't just the product, it was avoiding responsibility. The company didn't technically hire the salesman knocking on doors. They outsourced everything to independent distributors. That meant the profits still flowed upward, but the blame, the guilt trips, the dirt dumps, the psychological warfare stayed conveniently downstream. A perfect setup. The money was real, but the company itself was a ghost. This wasn't just business. It was a system built on plausible deniability. The pitch wasn't about suction power. It was about what kind of person you were. A clean home wasn't just hygiene. It was pride. It was proof you were a good mother, a loving father, a responsible adult. If there was dust under your couch, what else were you neglecting, right? The salesman wasn't selling a vacuum. He was selling morality itself, and Kirby claimed to be the only true path to virtue, which means selling Kirby was never just about dirt. Kirby presented itself as the American dream, a quality product, a chance to be your own boss, a way to rise. But look closer. The entrepreneurial path meant endless hours, high turnover, families drained of savings, and a corporation insulated from the mess it created. While centered on a real product, the system leaned heavily on recruiting and layered commissions, resembling a pyramid in its pressure to expand. Buyers were pressured into debt, sellers were pressured into burnout. Both sides thought they were reaching for opportunity, but both were being played by the same script. So was Kirby the dream or the scheme? Even after lawsuits, bad press, and the decline of door-to-door sales, Kirby still exists. That's the wild part. In 2025, people are still selling them. The same machines, the same price tags, the same strange mix of admiration and anger. The vacuum became bigger than a product. It became a paradox, one America still hasn't untangled. How something can be both admired and resented, trusted and feared, loved and hated, which leaves us with the uncomfortable question. Maybe Kirby was never just a vacuum. Maybe it was a mirror reflecting America's contradictions, hard work and exploitation, pride and shame, the dream and the scheme bound together in steel and chrome. Every knock on the door wasn't just a sales pitch. It was the American dream itself, gleaming, heavy, and impossible to ignore. So the real question is, when the American dream comes knocking at your door, how do you know if it's really a dream or a trap? So maybe Kirby was never just about cleaning floors. Maybe it was about cleaning consciences, selling virtue, and reflecting back the contradictions of the American dream itself. Pride and pressure, durability and debt, all packed inside a $2,000 chrome shell. And that's what lingers. When opportunity comes knocking, how do we know if it's a gift or a trap? If this story pulled you in, make sure you subscribe, hit like, and drop a comment. I want to know, have you ever bought something you admired but hated the way it was sold to you? Your stories might be closer to Kirby than you think. And if you think this sales saga was wild, wait until you hear how cardboard juice lids from Hawaii turned into $1 billion frenzy. That's in my last video, The Rise and Fall of Pogs. Trust me, you won't want to miss it.